Hello, hello. So welcome everyone. So we'll start our college planning webinar, Mastering the College Essay right now. And I'm very honored to have Miss Gabby with us today. And before we start, we'll have a few housekeeping items here. So if you have any questions, put in the Q&A or the chat box you can find on Zoom. And we want this to be very interactive. So if you want to speak, ask your questions anytime, you can raise your hands and our admin will help you to get into the Zoom so you can talk to Miss Gabby directly. So with that said, all the participants today, we just allowed for the students and the parents in our program already. So it's a smaller group and we mean to give you a lot of good information and have a very interactive, informational session with Miss Gabby. So Miss Gabby, next page, please. So actually, I forgot to introduce myself. I think everybody have met me. I'm Dr. Sherry Hu, so I'm the director of Beyond Academy, and we help students and the parents to prepare for the college, and we want to help the student to get into their dream colleges. So with that said, I want to say we're so happy today we got Miss Gabby here. Miss Gabby graduated with the highest honor from Tufts University, and she has a bachelor degree in English and American Studies. Her concentration is in education, and she is a very successful tutor. In the past years, she has tutored many students in writing, especially to prepare for the college essays. And for her students, as you can see from the screen, has been accepted to like best schools like Harvard, MIT, those schools here. And with that said, let's welcome Miss Gabby, and let's Miss Gabby to start today's meeting with us.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Sherry. It's been awesome to work with you for over a year now, and I'm really excited to be back with this group of students and a new group of students talking about college essays, something that might be daunting for y'all and something that I really enjoy talking about. So
it's awesome. Take away.
Thank you. So yeah, like Sherry mentioned, I was trained as a writing tutor when I was a student at Tufts. I was studying English and American Studies, and so it was a really nice way to bring those skills together. And I've since translated those into one-on-one work with students from middle school through into grad school. I love getting my students' stories onto the paper, onto the page, and the process that goes with it. And yeah, would be excited to work with any of you after this session or moving into this summer as well. So I'm going to take us through, as discussed, how to master the college essay. It is an absolutely important piece of this whole puzzle of applying to college. And absolutely kudos to each of you students and families who are on this call because you're already starting to think about it, which is great. Unlike some of the more concrete pieces of the application process that maybe you're waiting to answer questions or for the colleges to send information, the essay is something that you can start to think about now as you think about what you might want to say about yourself and what you might want colleges to know first and foremost about you as a student and as a person. So we're going to start broad and get much more specific. And as Sherry mentioned out loud and in the chat, this is interactive. So I would love to hear from y'all. I will have a few points where I'll ask for your input, but just to warm us up, just to start, I would love for y'all to put in the chat, what do you think makes a good college essay? What is a college essay? What have you heard about it? You can put just one word or a whole sentence, but would love to hear from y'all what the college essay is really about. Thank you, Haley. You're brave for being first in the chat, and I appreciate it. Yes, it's about who you are as a person. What's unique about you? Absolutely. Have y'all heard any do's and don'ts about the college essay? What should you do or what should you not do? Perfect. I've heard that it's personal, about being personal, and that's important. It's also about answering a prompt. It's true. There are about 6 questions that you can choose from on the college application on the Common App. We're standing out, being unique, more personal, less generic. These are great. These are absolutely on the right track. Awesome. And feel free to keep putting thoughts in the chat. What I've kind of summed it up as is the college essay, what it is a chance to share who you are with the admissions office beyond facts and figures, right? So they're going to get this package about you. They're going to see your numbers, they're going to see your extracurriculars, your grades, they're also going to see your writing, right? That's a piece of it. And this is the most full, detailed, textured piece of your application. So it's your chance to communicate about yourself as a full person. Personal statement and statement of purpose are other great ways to refer to this essay. Sometimes that helps me as a tutor. Personal statement maybe is something we're used to hearing for people applying to graduate school. It's absolutely true when you're applying to be an undergraduate student. You're stating who you are, right? And then I saw this the most in the chat, which is awesome. Being unique and true to yourself is really important in this process. And I hope this doesn't sound too lofty. We're going to get more specific now moving forward. So what makes a good college essay, we've started to talk about, and I think Nate, this last comment in the chat is a great segue. Choosing a unique, standout, intriguing topic is really important. I like to be real with my students. Admissions counselors read tens of thousands of essays in one season alone. So standing out is sometimes half the battle in crafting a good college essay. That can be with your topic. It can also be with your voice, right? So the best college essays can be read by a stranger, and that stranger can still hear you talking, even though they've never met you. It's a hard thing to accomplish, but it's something that you can do through a number of kind of conversations with friends, family, tutors. I'm going to mention a couple times throughout this presentation that asking for help throughout this process is not important, but usually necessary. People who know you well are going to help you get your writing onto the page. And then the last piece that we haven't quite mentioned yet just now is the takeaway to your college essay. So you can choose any topic, right? Maybe you have a bunch of extracurriculars, bunch of hobbies, maybe you write about your favorite food, but there's a reason you chose that topic, and that reason should also come through on the page. So that's kind of the conclusion. The latter part of the essay is about explaining why that thing that you chose to talk about is important to you or what it says about you. It's hard to be too clear in a college essay, is my impression. You're allowed, and I encourage you to tell the admissions counselors what it is that you want them to take away from your essay. The flip side of what I'm saying makes a good college essay is that the specificity is really important. You do not want to talk about everything about you. You actually cannot talk about everything about you in 650 words. So again, I'm saying a lot right now. This is just to give you a framing and hopefully maybe tell you something new about the college essay that maybe you haven't thought about before, but we're going to get much more specific for the next few slides. So here's the process that I've outlined for writing a college essay. Generally, this is a process that can and should take a few months. It could start now, it could start towards the end of your school year. Both of those work. And y'all will have access to this recording of this webinar also. So if you're wanting to come back and see how I've outlined the process or anything, this will be available to you. So I'm just gonna talk through it real quick. And then we're gonna dig into a few specific pieces of this process for the rest of our time together. So starting in the bottom left corner, you of course want to choose a topic before you begin writing. It's okay to choose 2 topics and see what it looks like to write those out. It's okay to change topics, but that's your first step. And I talk it out as a whole piece of this. I think when we're translating ourselves and our personalities and our voices onto the page, being conversational with your peers, your friends, your parents, your teacher, tutor, anyone who you feel you can be authentic with, that's an important piece. Tell them what your idea is, ask them what they think, tell them why you're excited about writing about that. Just hearing yourself talk it out is actually the kind of a step in pre-writing. And in my sessions with my students, I often do a lot of that conversation before we even get into the nitty-gritty of the paragraphs we're writing together. Third step, I want you to outline. I always want everyone to outline their writing. It helps you stay focused and understand why and how the different pieces fit together. Number 4, write a draft, of course. Number 5, a whole separate step. I want you to make sure your essay is vivid, is the word I chose, detailed, interesting. It's writing, right? It's not just answering a question. So this step is really about, is your essay the full, does it encapsulate what you really wanted to discuss and convey? Then after you put all your details, I want you to make cuts. All of these drafts are over 650 almost all of the time, and that's fine. That's also where a tutor can come in. I've gotten really good at getting students to 650 words, and I'm sure that other writing tutors can as well. Second to last step, I want you to do your big picture edits. So that's how do my ideas flow together? Does my voice come through, and is it consistent, right? Maybe sometimes I have students make like one joke in the whole essay, and it's like the joke can land really well, but we either want to add a few more jokes throughout the essay or take them out so that our tone is consistent, right? So those are the types of questions you're asking at this point. Structure, organization. Sometimes I have students switch around entire paragraphs, and that makes the essay way better. This is when you're asking yourself that. Then final edits is more about grammar, word choice, punctuation. Maybe the most important thing I can share with y'all today, right now, is read your essay out loud to yourself when you think it's done. You will catch mistakes. You will catch small words that you want to be different. It feels silly, but I always do this with my students, and we always catch something we missed when we were reading in our heads. Cool. I just want to pause and see if there are any immediate questions. I would love if anyone wants to put in the chat if you want me to explain anything on this a little bit more or repeat anything. If something wasn't clear, now's a good time to let me know. Okay. Great. So I'm seeing a few things. 650 words is the limit for the Common Application personal statement essay. It ends up being like a 5-paragraph essay. It's certainly room to write what you want to write, but cutting those words down is definitely a part of my job. The question about topics, I'm going to table because we're about to move into those. That's going to be fun. And then I'm seeing a question, can essays be story-like in structure? Are they supposed to be more professional? I appreciate you asking that now. A story is wonderful. Casual is also wonderful. There's just such a range of what you can choose for your topic and your tone. I'm happy we're at the end of a whole nother season of applications, right? I'm hearing from my students who are seniors right now. A couple of them got into Northeastern University today, which I'm really excited about. One of them got into Bates, and he's probably going up to Maine to go to school there. So that's to say, I have a lot of examples of essay topics, but just to start with the specific question about stories or professionalism, I got into Tufts by writing an essay about all of the nicknames that I was given in high school. I chose some nicknames and explained how those, when the people who called me those different things really showed the different communities that I was a part of, but it was casual and lighthearted and fun. And it was actually an essay that the president even referenced in our matriculation speech. So when we were just beginning to become students at Tufts, he was mentioning some different students, and he said there's a gal from New Jersey with 47 different nicknames. So that was an essay that really stood out, right? I hope that's a helpful example. The word limit is very strict. Yes, 650, no more. You can be more brief, can be 500, 550, that's fine. I wouldn't go lower than that, but yep, you will find that to be true even in your supplementary essays for different colleges. They might give you 200, 300 word limits. And it's a challenge, but one that I usually suggest waiting on, because you want to make sure all your ideas are there first before you figure out how to synthesize them. Excellent questions. I'm going to move forward because we get to focus on a few specific parts of this process today. Like I mentioned, we're going to talk about topics for a while, and then we'll also talk about outline and structure. But this is probably my favorite part of this little presentation. We did this last year as well. I know that one of the most helpful things I can do for y'all right now, as you just start to think about your essays, is help you consider the topics you might write about. And to do that, we get to brainstorm together, so you can see different students' ideas who are in this room, and I'll share some with you as well from my former students. So this will be anonymous, the activity I have planned for us. We're going to spend a few minutes on each of these three categories on the screen. So there are a million questions that you can use as prompts to write your essay. I did mention earlier the Common Application put 6 prompts to choose from on their application. And most of these questions we're talking about fit into those 6 categories. There is also a 7th category that just says write about whatever you want on the Common App, right? So you can really write about whatever you want. But when we break things down and think about, okay, what might go into a good personal statement, I consider these 3 different categories to be really helpful. So the categories are hobbies and interests. So generally, a lot of you do things outside of the classroom, and often a lot of you have an extracurricular, a hobby, a habit, an art that is really defines who you are and how you spend your time. So these types of essays would describe how you got into that thing, why you care about it, what it's taught you, right? That sort of thing. Second category is pivotal moments. So a lot of good essays tell a specific story. So that goes back to that earlier question about a time that really shifted your perspective. I call these pivotal because pivot is the word we got used to using in earlier pandemic times, right? It's when you shift, you change things based on new conditions. So these pivotal moments essays ask that you talk about, you tell that story of that time and explain how it impacted you for the long run. The third category is more specifically kind of about defining who you are through your cultural background and identity. There is a lot of overlap between these 3 categories. They almost could be in a Venn diagram, but I've seen some really awesome essays where students say, you know, I wouldn't be who I am without my extended family who lives in the country of India, right? And so I'm going to talk about them. One of my students this year was actually my youngest sister, who is basically your age. She's 18. And we ended up writing her essay about how my family cooks together. And we used a recipe specifically for chimichurri, which is like an Argentinian condiment. But we used the recipe and kind of wrote out the ingredients and put different stories into each of those sections that related to both that ingredient and her understanding of herself and her family and our love of food. So that's a good example, I think, of how background and identity formed into her essay. So again, I've talked almost too much at y'all. So now it's your turn to share your ideas with me. This is the activity we're going to do. It is anonymous. It might prompt you to enter your name, but you'll have a skip option. So there are 3 ways for you to get to this activity on your computer or phone. So you can scan this QR code. You can send a text, so Gabby V250, to this number, 37607, or you can click on the link that I just put in the chat. You might have to copy and paste it, but that link will get you there. Awesome. So I'm going to give y'all a second to get there. So again, QR code, send a text, or copy and paste that link. And then I'm going to take us to this screen. So like I said, there's these three categories: hobbies, pivotal moments, and identity. We're going to spend a minute first talking about your hobbies and interests. So hopefully as y'all follow that link or send those texts, you're getting prompted to enter what hobbies and interests you have. And you can enter multiple times. So if some of you in this room play a sport that you really love, just type the name of that sport, put it in here. If you like to, I loved to cook and bake when I was in high school. Perfect. So I'm starting to see them pop up on the screen. This is great. Couple people. So it's going to make the words bigger when that's an activity that more people do. So it seems like we have a couple of dancers in the room, which is great. Awesome. And so feel free to look at the screen. And if you remember another thing that you're interested in, a hobby you do because of reading these other ones, then enter another response. I would love if everyone enters maybe 2 or 3 responses each. This is awesome. Appreciate it, y'all. I'm happy to start to see reading, advocacy on there, the hobbies that maybe are less structured with a team or an after-school activity, but they're still ways that you spend a lot of your time. This is great. I'm seeing robotics. I saw coding or computing somewhere on there. Community soccer, beautiful. Gaming, math, law, that's impressive. Yeah, a couple people with programming. Awesome. So feel free to keep entering them, but think about your response for a moment and think about what you might say about that activity in terms of how it defines you, right? What does it say about you? What have you learned by doing that thing? These are all the kind of prompts that you would start to answer as you're drafting and outlining your essay. Perfect. And now that we're all on the poll everywhere, I do have 1 or 2 more prompts if anyone has any last responses. So what hobby have you enjoyed for a long time? Looks like a lot of you put your answers to that question already on here. Similar question here that I asked earlier. What interest or talent would your application be incomplete without? So if any of y'all now can think of talents or skills that you have that are really unique, you can put those in the response now. And then another prompt here is maybe there's a concept or activity you find so engaging it makes you lose track of time entirely. That's another thing you could write about here.
So Miss Gabby, I'm doing this as well. And then it shows the poll is full. This poll has received the maximum number of responses allowed.
Awesome. Thank you for letting me know. We will move on to the next one then. Appreciate y'all for maxing it out. That's great. So if you refresh your link, or it might have updated on your own, if you send that text again to the same number, or I will go back for a moment to the QR code. We're going to now talk about those pivotal moments. Perfect. I appreciate y'all already participating. And so similar to last one, I have a few more prompts that I'll read for this. So when I say pivotal moment, I mean a time when you overcame something really difficult, right? I honestly, the essay that came most naturally to the process when I was working, I worked with over 20 students this past season in writing their college essays. And one of them had taken care of her dad who had cancer, right, for a number of years. And so she was like, of course, this is my essay. I can't imagine not writing about this. So that was a pivotal moment. It was something she overcame. We did a lot of cool work on that essay to really center her and her experience, not just her dad's illness, which sounds kind of weird, but in terms of applying to college, the admissions counselors are really most interested in what you've gone through, what you've learned, how you experience different hard things. Oh my gosh, I want to hear more about whoever saw an assassination attempt. That is wild and probably should be your essay. So just to keep prompting you, you might write about the most difficult thing you've overcome. You might write about a specific trip that you went on that really changed your perspective. Maybe there was a specific person you met who really changed your perspective. There might have been an incident or moment or mistake that shaped who you are today. Think about challenges or failures you've faced. Those are when we learn the most sometimes, right? Think about a time when maybe you questioned a belief or idea that you held. Or think about a time when you solved a problem or when you were a part of a team. So I'm just going to scroll so we can all see these responses, but I would love to get a few more before we move on. So grandma got sick, someone got a dog, life during and after COVID, that's a huge one lately. Overcoming toxic friendships, I appreciate that one. That's absolutely unique. Failing after trying my best. These are good. Becoming a state officer, I'm curious about that one. Great. So I just want to continue to give more specific examples to really get your gears turning. So another essay for one of Sherry's students who I worked with this past season, she came to me with almost no idea for what to write for her essay. And we actually, we met and then she went on a vacation and then she came back and we talked about the vacation, just, catching up before we dove into our work. And she mentioned that she and her girlfriend had gotten lost in an Italian city while they were on this trip. And I said, that's an awesome story. Can you tell me more? After telling me more, we realized that would be an awesome college essay. So her essay did end up being about, it was the story of just these 30 minutes, right? An hour of being lost, like very specific topic. But she got to talk about, through that topic, she got to talk about vulnerability and trusting herself and opening up and connecting with people because of all of the kind of stress and vulnerability that experience of getting lost had brought up for her. That was also a great example of an essay that was way too long. We got it from probably like 1,200 words back to 650. So it is possible, don't worry. I saw that prompted someone to write about visiting Europe. That's great. I would encourage that person to think about, just like that essay, what specifically happened to you? What happened to you one day, one meal while you were in Europe? Who did you meet? All of those could be potential essay topics rather than writing about your whole trip, right? What specific moments did you have while you were over there? Awesome. And so one final exercise here. This is the piece about cultural background and identity. So some of the prompts I have for you here, if you listen closely, how are you a continuation of or a departure from your family's history and beliefs? And I'm going to show you these on the screen before I go back. What matters to you? What issues do you care about? Where and from whom did you learn to care about these things? What do you love about the place where you live? Discuss an accomplishment, event, or realization that sparked a period of personal growth and a new understanding of yourself and others. So the essay that my sister and I wrote together about her, like the recipe and how she relates to my family and our tradition of eating a lot and sharing meals, that came from me asking her, like, do you feel like you share values with our parents and with our other sisters, or do you feel like you have a total, like, do you stand out from the family, right? And so that can be a really cool prompt. She said that she actually really values family tradition and gathering together. It makes sense as the youngest sister, especially, right, that she loves when everyone is together in the same place. So that prompted that essay. You'll start to see some overlap as well, where maybe one of the activities you participate in is also a cultural activity. Maybe you do a dance that is traditional to the culture of the country where your family came from before the States. So that might be an essay that both tackles cultural identity and passion and your love for something. Okay, I'm seeing that we're struggling with this one a little bit more. Why don't we think about what I would love for y'all to maybe drop some family traditions into this poll everywhere. So I'll continue with my own examples. My family is very like New York Italian, for better or worse. So we love to eat. And every Christmas Eve, we do a feast of the 7 fishes. So we have a huge seafood feast. It's our favorite night of the year. That's perfect. First generation, your family, in your family to be born and raised in America. And so I would probably ask that student, and I did help some students with these types of essays this year. Where do you see differences between the outside world and your family's inside home world? And then what have you learned from your family, and what have you learned from the outside world? Where does that conflict? Those are all the kind of follow-up questions I would ask for a student writing about this topic. Okay, I want to hear more traditions from y'all. I love that. Thank you for whoever just shared that piece. One of the questions I asked on my slide was, what do you love about the place where you live? So I would love for a few people to answer that as well. Or what do you really dislike about the place where you live now? Is there a physical place you like to go to in your town or city that brings you a lot of peace or joy? I could have written a whole college essay about a point in my town where I grew up in New Jersey, where you can overlook the whole skyline of New York City. And I would go there almost every day to reflect and meditate and reset. I'm seeing someone feels like a continuation of their culture's hardworking energy. I love that. Being in a big city overflowing with people, absolutely. You could write an essay about the energy of the city you're in and how you fit into that piece of the puzzle, right? So I haven't yet mentioned my favorite essay I worked on this college season, and I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to pick favorites, but it was just such a joy to work on, partially because I have a lot of overlap with the student. I've had a lot of like front of house restaurant service jobs, and one of my students came to me with a draft of an essay about working in a cheese shop in his town. And I was thrilled because I said, let's talk about cheese. Let's talk about your favorite cheese. Let's talk about your regular customers and their favorite cheeses, right? Again, this is very lighthearted, but it's something that came to really define this student. He spent most of his out of school time at this job, and he found a real passion for the world of cheese. And so we had a ton of fun writing this. And so I bring this up now because it actually did start to form a piece of his identity, his love for this craft and his community in that way. And so if that sparks something for any of you, if you have jobs that really define you, if you have like passions that you totally nerd out about, those can come into this identity piece as well. Cool. It sounds like this most recent person has a really big family. That's a fun one to write about. Valuing education, that's important. I also got to grow up somewhere that valued education. I loved that. I'm going to wait for like one more response on this culture and identity piece before we move on. And I will show you the questions one more time. So I'm seeing another question. I'm going to answer it now. Should your essay reference your major or the college you're applying to? Definitely not the college you're applying to, because you're going to write this one essay that almost every school you apply to will see, because it's every school on the Common Application portal. So it's the supplementary essays are where you're going to write about the specific school, and each school has a list of supplementary essays, or they don't have any at all. But they might ask you, like, I know BU, Boston University, always asks like, why BU? And they give you like 300 words to tell them why you want to go there. Tufts, where I went, has a few of those questions as well. And so that's where you'll talk about the school specifically. And often that's where you'll talk about your major specifically. They might ask you why you want to study what you said that you want to study. That's another good reason working with a tutor is a good idea. I almost always encourage my students to organize all their supplementary essays before they begin writing. There's a lot more overlap than you would think between the different schools' questions. And so someone like a tutor can help you see those overlaps so you avoid writing. Instead of writing 35 essays, you might write 5 extra essays. And so last part of that question in the chat, for your major, you can write a really good Common App essay about your major, but I would say that almost everyone shouldn't write their Common Application personal statement about your major, because you'll have other opportunities to express your interest in that. And I am not very old, but I'm old enough to have just missed the computer science bubble that y'all are growing up in. So I'm really excited if you want to study computer science. It's hard to write a really unique essay about why you want to study computer science. So I would not choose that as your main topic. And I would start thinking now about why, if you do want to study computer science or engineering, something adjacent, why do you love that thing so much? Being able to articulate that will be really important for getting into some of the top schools. So I love these last few answers. I see someone noted different languages and different ways of getting along with friends. That could be an amazing thing to interrogate in your college essay. And then cultural traditions and holidays that are not celebrated or given days off in America, but celebrated at home. That's a cool one, absolutely, to think through. You could even pick a specific holiday and write about that. Okay, I hope your creative juices are flowing. I hope that you maybe wrote down an idea or two. That is the goal of this webinar, is to have you leave with a few more specific ideas and directions. Perfect. So a few more pieces, and then we're going to leave plenty of time for more questions at the end. So I mentioned the outline being a really important piece of your college essay writing process as well. So once you've chosen a topic and you've talked it out, right, with your tutor or someone else in your life, I really want you to write an outline. The outline could be incredibly detailed. It could be just a few words, but I think it's so important to think about how your ideas fit together before you get into the weeds of writing. So generally, each college essay has 3 main parts to it. You, of course, introduce your topic. right? The beginning is really important, again, because your counselor is reading so many essays. You do want to grab their attention or intrigue your reader in your introduction. You've heard the language of using a hook. That can be a number of things. It can be a surprising statement. It can be a piece of dialogue. It can be a question. You can drop the reader in the middle of a story, right? In the middle of an intense moment. So many options, but you want to grab their attention. And then you're setting the tone in the introduction as well. You don't really need like a thesis. In some ways, the college essay builds on the 5-paragraph essay you've maybe learned in school, and in other ways it departs from it. So it's okay if you don't reveal your thesis until later into the essay. So the body of your essay, most of your essay is descriptive, right? You're talking about something that matters to you, and by talking about it, you're communicating who you are and what you care about. I think telling a story is a great way to do that. You can also do like a list essay. Like I mentioned, my nicknames essay or my sister's recipe essay was not one cohesive story, but rather some small like vignettes or blurbs. You do want to be descriptive in a way that's authentic to you. And then you, of course, want to conclude your essay. Like I mentioned earlier, the readers want to know why you chose this topic. Why is it important to you? What have you learned? Those are the concluding pieces. Really, the thesis almost comes through at the end of your essay, typically. So again, please outline. You can do it in a way that works for you, but it's really important. So on that note, I have a few more words of wisdom I want to share with you. So here's some do's and don'ts of the process. If you want to take a screenshot of this, go for it. And a reminder that you will have access to the webinar through Sherry's Beyond Academy portal. So I organized these to kind of work off of one another. So as we've been talking about, pick a really focused topic for your essay. Don't try to squish your whole resume into a college essay. I've seen it, it never works. I do want you to pick an original topic. This is where we start to get specific. I know I asked y'all about sports and injuries and illness and trips. I've read from a lot of college counselors that they don't want to read about any more sports injuries, and they don't want to read about any more volunteer trips. I'm sorry to bear the bad news. If you were excited to write about either of those things, those topics are kind of considered off limits at this point in time. If you're going to choose one of those topics, however, what some of the best advice I've heard is you can choose a common topic and make uncommon connections, right? So instead of writing about how coding made you a better problem solver, because that's kind of inherent to coding, right? What if you wrote about how coding made you an artist, right? Something surprising and unique. So some other do's and don'ts, you can be proud and you can talk honestly about what you've done without being too braggy. The flip side of that is you don't need to try to be really humble. This is your chance to write about you. It's your chance to shine. You can be opinionated in your essay, just avoid really political essays, right? You'll have more chances to debate politics when you actually attend a school. And then, like I just mentioned, really important, you can make uncommon connections rather than using a template or making stuff up. Okay, it's a lot. To accomplish all of this, I'm going to encourage you primarily to accept help and ask for help throughout this process. You cannot and should not draft your college essay from start to finish alone. Especially ask for help when you're choosing a topic, cutting down your essay, editing for big picture and for more minor edits. So again, I and Beyond Academy and Cherry are here to support you through that process, or even support you in figuring out who else to reach out to. All right, y'all, we've talked about a lot. We've made it. I wanted to give you this process one more time in case you want to save any specific pieces of this as you think about your next few months. I'm going to stop talking and see what questions you have. So please go ahead and drop them in the chat, or I believe Tom and Beyond Academy are here for any tech support if you would like to ask a question out loud.
So while we're waiting for the questions, Ms. Gabby, first I want to thank you. That's an awesome interactive webinar. I really like it. I participated 2 of the 3 topics. I really enjoy this. Okay, we got our first question, I believe. All right, so I will answer this question. So Abby is a mom, and other one, any way you can set up a meeting. Abby, I will get back on you on this. Okay. So I know Miss Gabby is awesome. We'll work on this with you, Abby. So let's see other questions. So I want to ask you the timeline, like when students should start writing, putting things down on paper.
Yes, I appreciate that question. It's definitely a nice place to go from this slide that's still on display about this whole process. So early is great. Early kind of means by summertime. I would say June is still early to start this, or is a solid time to start this. Why I'm hesitating is because I don't want y'all to start this if you're already really busy, because a really good essay takes some time to sit with and kind of marinate in the back of your head. I realized this kind of late in college. I realized that when I had final essays, like whole term papers, and even I wrote like a 200-page thesis at the end of my time in college, they were always better when I gave myself some time between drafts to really sit with things. So if you're slammed with schoolwork right now, don't feel like you need to also start this right now. Maybe wait, maybe spring break. If you haven't had spring break yet in this March or April, that could be a really cool time to brainstorm topics. Similarly, as school really slows down, maybe you're in a lot of APs, and then after your AP classes or after your AP exams in May, that could be a nice time. Give yourself a little spaciousness with the choosing a topic and talking it out. In terms of those next pieces, I would say you want to do those in the summer. So July is a great time to build an outline and write a draft. I think you'll feel awesome if you've written your first draft before you go back to school in the fall. You'll feel even more awesome if you have a second or third draft before you go back to school in the fall. But definitely having it written before you're swept up into the craziness of senior year is something I highly, highly recommend.
Thank you, Ms. Gabby. So we have a student, Livreti here, and I want to ask if Tom, you can get Livreti to talk.
Hey, sorry, this is Nivriti's dad. Can you hear me?
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, go ahead, Ganesh.
Oh, see, almost everybody I talk to, they say that your kid must be unique. They must have something special that no other kid has. Okay. Of course, we all know our kids are all unique, but that's almost impossible given that almost everybody has every activity and every hobby covered. Your kid cannot have a unique hobby or a unique activity nowadays. So how do you kind of handle that?
That's a great question. And I know it's kind of daunting to think about the scale of the applications and the number of students applying and that sort of thing. So we talked about a couple elements of the essay. We talked a lot about topic, but I agree with you that it's almost impossible to choose a topic that no one else has ever chosen. So beyond topic, a couple of things that can make an essay really unique are tone and voice and structure of an essay. So going back to that example of my student who got lost with her girlfriend in Italy, that essay no other essay will be like that, because no other student specifically got lost in that specific Italian town and told the story in that way, right? So I think specifically story type essays are always stand out because you've had your own unique experiences. But again, in terms of tone of voice in the essay, I mentioned a common topic like computer science. Maybe the whole essay about computer science is really funny, right? Maybe there's a bunch of jokes about why, like how the student approaches computer science. That might be an essay that really stands out from the pile. I think lastly, I really want to emphasize that common topics and uncommon connections piece. So if it feels like maybe you're writing about a sport or something that a lot of students do or play, what has your student uniquely learned from doing that? Or how might that topic connect to other things that they care about or spend their time doing? Those are the prompts that I would probably leave you with.
Thanks.
Thanks
for that great question.
Thank you. Ms. Gabby, so you have mentioned that there's a personal statement and also there's a supplemental essays. So it's common to students to apply like 10 to 20 schools nowadays. And can you cover like totally how many essays in general a student need to prepare? I know you also talk about there's a lot of common themes. You don't have to prepare a lot. Can you give some examples so students get some idea like how many words, how many different versions they need to kind of prepare for that?
Yes, absolutely. So I would say like 2/3 of schools have supplementary essays. There are a few awesome key schools that a lot of students apply to that don't have essays, and that's actually why they get so many applications, Northeastern being the prime example. There's no supplements for Northeastern. They get tens of thousands of students applying. So generally, if you have a list, say of your 12, 13 schools, 10 have supplements, they're going to have between 1 and 3 supplements. So you might be looking at 25, 20 individual supplementary essays. That's scary, but it's not when you look at the overlap. I've kind of identified, and if you contact Sherry about working with me, I've identified like 7 or 8 kind of core topics that these questions always cover. Some are like times you worked on a team, some are family background and identity, some are something that you went through that was difficult. A lot of them are, why do you want to go to this school, or why do you want to study what you want to study, right? So you might write 5 really good core pieces of supplementary essays, and then you just get to edit the details and the beginning and end of those to make it those 20 or so essays. Usually they're like 250 words. So it's really like 2 paragraphs. We say essay because it does have like a beginning, middle, and end, but they feel more like blurbs, and they're much more specific than the personal statement at 650. Yeah, generally 250. 100-word essays are very funny. You're kind of just answering the question. They're very straightforward. I think USC in California is a very popular school, and they have like 50 character answers. Like they just want your very immediate response to like, what song is your theme song? Like there are a few questions that, again, the goal is like it can feel competitive and stressful, but the admissions counselors really do want to get to know you. And so those supplements are pieces where they get to ask about specific qualities and who you are and what you care about. Hopefully those numbers help.
Yeah.
And not too scary.
That helps so much. Thank you, Ms. Gabby. So we are close to the time. If you still have question, we can take one more last question. And if there's, I'll just wait for a few more seconds. If there's no questions, we'll just want to thank Ms. Gabby and for such a informational webinar and interactive, gave us a lot of things to think about. And thank you again. And there is one more question. So let's answer this one more last question before we dismiss the meeting today.
Perfect. So Nate, great question. I'll give you a number and then I'll give you a much broader answer. In terms of numbers, Sherry's right. A lot of people apply between 10 and 20 schools. The Common App will cut you off at like 16, 18, I forget exactly, but it'll stop you from applying literally everywhere, which is probably good. So I applied to 13. Again, I'm like a little bit ahead of the current moment y'all are applying in, but that felt like a good number. 8 is also fine. Here's the kind of, as you build your college list, a really good way of framing it, I heard, is shifting from, we're used to hearing safeties, targets, reaches, right? But the other way to call those different categories of school are, where are you really likely to get in? Those are your targets, right? If you look at the numbers and if you look at the people who went to school in your area and applied to those schools and they got in and they have similar stats to you, you're pretty likely to get in. And then where are you less likely to get in? Those are kind of your reaches. Where are you very likely to get in? And again, this is kind of based on numbers. And again, anyone you know in your area who's applied to these schools. And then some really good advice I heard is that the Ivy Leagues and a few other schools like that are total wild cards. They're in this own category of just wild card, and you want to do your best, and you can only do your best when you're applying to those schools. So if you reframe it that way, you want to have a couple of schools probably in each of those categories.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Gabby. So thanks to everyone for participating in today's meeting. And there's one more thing I want to mention is Ms. Gabby is also available for tutoring the American history class. That's Ms. Gabby's favorite class. So if you need any additional help in that area, you can contact me as well. With that said, let's thank Ms. Gabby again and wish everyone have a good week. Have a good week. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much, Sherry. And thank you all for being here. I really enjoy this conversation and hope to connect with some of you this season. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.